Well, today I want to take you on another kitchen garden tour so that you can see how everything in my kitchen garden is coming into bloom. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferments, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Well, in part one of my garden tour, which I shared with you a few weeks ago, there really was very little here in my kitchen garden. We had survived those terrible Texas storms, and I really was starting all over again here. Well, you may see my faithful companion, our sweet dog Obi-Wan, joining me here in the garden, and I've got my handsome husband behind me as my cameraman, and hopefully you're hearing me very clearly because he was so sweet to find another mic to attach to the phone, so hopefully I'm coming in nice and clear for you. Well, in part one, I showed you pretty much a lot of the plants that I really had lost. They just weren't able to survive the below freezing temperatures that we had for about a week here in Central Texas back in February. But I also showed you a few that were able to survive and are perennials and are starting to come back. So now I'm going to show you how fantastic they're looking. The first thing I want to share with you, because I am so happy about this, because this is one of my favorite plants. It's called Texas tarragon, and you may also know it as Mexican marigold. It's in the marigold family. It gets a beautiful yellow flower in the fall, which I'll be sure to share with you. But what I love about Texas tarragon, if the name gives you a little bit of a hint, is that the leaves taste just like tarragon. And I love tarragon, but it's very difficult to grow here, either the French variety or the Russian variety, because it just gets so hot here. But Texas tarragon does beautifully. Now in part one, you might remember, I showed you the tiny little green leaves that were starting to show up here, so I was very happy that the tarragon, my Texas tarragon, did survive and was coming back. Now, something that you might see, what I'm planting in here are some ice plants. They're going right in front of the Texas tarragon. I really love ice plants, anything in the ice plant family. I love portulaca, purslane. I just think they're all so pretty. And I got these on clearance at my grocery store because we are getting a little late here now that we're in April. It is getting a little late to keep planting. However, I figure when I can get some plants on clearance, and really they're just for a couple of cents, it's well worth it to make the little bit of investment, which really isn't much, and give them a try and see how they do. And what I'm doing is putting some rocks all around them. You may see these, they're very pretty, and I have to tell you a little story about all of these rocks. When my son was a little boy, he loved rocks. And one day we were out and about on one of our junking adventures, and we came across this little shop where this man sold a lot of rocks. And these are, you know, like, I don't know what you call this, something in the quartz or family, or just plain glass, colored glass. But he had so much of this. And he was in the process of moving his little store. So he said to my son, oh, fill up a box, you know, and it was only a couple of dollars. And we just had a lot of fun. So what I've done is I kind of have them spread around the garden, but I'm putting them right in the front here because ice plants love to grow around rocks and in rock gardens. So I'm hoping that they'll do well. They have a beautiful, you can't see the flower now, but they have a beautiful sort of, this particular variety has a beautiful kind of red, orangey type little sunburst flower. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I've got my little yard art, which I'll talk to you about another day because I love yard art. And it's a little chipped on top, but that was something too that my son had picked out that the man had at the rock shop. And it was just this cute little mushroom. And so Benjamin was like, oh, Mama, can we get that? So we've had that for a long time. But now let's move on. What I've got here is I'm just giving this a try. It's been years since I've grown strawberries. And I just saw this at the garden shop. And I thought, well, this will be kind of fun. I'll just do a little experiment. I've got one strawberry already growing here, and we'll see how they do. And maybe in the future, I'll do more strawberries in one of the raised beds with some straw. And then over here, I decided, you might remember, if you saw part one, I had bought some Italian oregano. But in the Italian oregano, I also had picked up one plant that was Greek oregano. Now, I've never grown Greek oregano, but we have a little experimental garden over near where our water district is. They've got a few plants that do real well. In Texas, that's actually where I learned about the Texas tarragon. And they have Greek oregano growing there, so it obviously does very well here. And I just thought I would put it in a pot, and it just has such a beautiful, pretty hanging way about it. So I think that's going to be lovely, and it'll be great for clipping and using in cooking. Now, there's not too much to see here, and you may remember I used to grow some peppers here, you know, the spicy peppers. They do pretty much well anywhere in the garden. But what I decided to do was to put in some purple coneflower. Now, years ago I had purple coneflower here, and it always did very well. Now, but I planted the seeds in the spring, and generally purple coneflower, the seeds like to be planted in the cooler months, and then it'll germinate and come up in the spring. But I've got a few that did germinate and are coming up, so you know, as that progresses, I'll definitely share that with you. If you're not familiar with purple coneflower, it's what we know as the herb echinacea, which is very good, both the roots, the stems, the leaves, the flowers, all of that is very great for making medicinal herbal remedies that help boost immunity. They're often in different types of natural cold and flu preparations. And if you want to learn more about that, I have a video where I talk about, actually two, where I talk about the 15 what I call essential medicinal herbs to grow and or buy dried for making home remedies, and I'll be sure to link to that in the iCards and in the description below. Some of them are very common and they're very easy to grow, so definitely check that out. Now over here, I've just got a little flat leaf Italian parsley growing. I generally don't grow this in the spring. I generally wait until the fall because it does struggle once it starts to get real hot here. And when I say real hot, we're in April and we've already had some 90-degree days. So May is going to be very, very hot. But I think I shared this with you all earlier, but we were at the Natural Gardener, which is a terrific gardening shop in Austin. And we had a coupon that if you spent $50, you got like $10 off. But I didn't quite make it up to the $50, so the lady said, oh, get a few other plants. But it was very crowded. The place is always very crowded. And there was a long line, and I didn't want to hold things up. So I just said, okay, 2 flat leaf Italian parsley, which is silly of me. But anyway, so I put them in, and they'll do fine, you know, and I'll enjoy using them in cooking before it gets too hot. But then right next to it is my purple sage. Now, if you did see part 1 already, you know that I went back and forth, back and forth. I just was not sure where to plant sage. Now, most herbs, most plants, they will say that they like, you know, full sun, unless they're a shade plant. However, in Central Texas, I have learned that full sun actually means partial shade for us, because most plants, whether they're herbs or vegetables or edible flowers or even regular flowers, is my sweet girl here, my Obi-Wan. And she loves walking around the garden. It's so cute. But in any event, they certain herbs I notice and certain plants really can't take those full sun locations. Full sun meaning like 6 hours of full sun. Because our sun can get so strong and so hot. So what I decided to do was to plant the sage over here instead of the raised bed that's right outside my kitchen, which we'll visit in a minute. And I think this will do well. So far it's doing great here. It gets a little bit of the morning sun, and then the rest of the day it's just sort of a little speckled like what you're seeing now. or it'll just, you know, be in shade and it'll be very happy, especially later in the day. So as we keep moving along, what I've got here is just a line of calendula. And yes, I know that the proper pronunciation is calendula. I am always inclined to say calendula because it's calendula is named after calendar, because it generally like bloomed, I think, at the beginning of the calendar or whatever the case may be. So I always want to say calendula, and I even say that in one of my videos. But yes, I know it's calendula. But in any event, I just planted these seeds about a month or so ago, and they were seeds that calendula is not, or seed, I'm going to say it again, calendula is not something that I can really find around here as a plant. So these were seeds that I had got from a place that I've shared with all of you that I just love, Mountain Rose Herbs. You can buy seeds from them. If you prefer not to grow your own herbs, you can buy the dried herb from them. So it's a great little resource. But in any event, so I've got some growing there, and I think that's going to be lovely. And I forgot to mention over here, I've just got right over here. It's kind of funny. Sometimes I never quite know what's coming up or what's coming back, or maybe where I dropped a seed or something like that. But I've got some beautiful nasturtium starting to come up right here. And these are edible flowers. They're going to get a beautiful flower, and they're edible flowers. And this is something too, and we're going to just find out together what that is. But I definitely recognize the nasturtium. Now, coming over here, and I just want to give a tip for any of you who may have a kitchen garden, or any garden for that matter, where you have the sprinkler pipes that come above the ground. We live in a very old house, and our sprinkler pipes are copper, and I have tripped over these many a time. So I put these like little garden stakes, or whatever you want to call them, in to keep me from tripping over them and taking a fall. But in any event, I don't have anything planted right here in the very in this area right here. I really want to see how things grow. I don't want things to get too crowded, because then we can sometimes run into problems. When things get really crowded, we run into a little problem with powdery mildew on some of the plants, that especially the more Mediterranean ones like the rosemary and the lavender that really like, they do like the warm weather. They hold up well in the sun. They love some breeze, you know, just a typical Mediterranean climate, which we really have that type of climate for the better part of the year. The summer, though, you know, I mean, we can be 100, 110, and it can be very, very hot. But rosemary, lavender, I never have any problem with. As a matter of fact, there's a big lavender farm out here in the hill country, which maybe one day we'll go on a little road trip there. It's just glorious. But in any event, along the wall there, I've got growing some what's known as bee balm. And I love bee balm because, as the name implies, it really attracts a lot of bees. And it's also a medicinal herb, but it has a beautiful flower, which I'm definitely going to bring you all back when everything is in full bloom. You're just going to love the bee balm. I've got some bee balm planted on the other side of the garden as well, which I'll take you over there in a minute. But the bee balm gets a beautiful flower. It looks like a firework explosion. Just these like very colorful red, white, pink, glorious. And the bees love it. So I always like to make sure that I have some of that growing. There's so much I want to grow. I really want to bring back pineapple sage, which is an edible herb, into my garden. I don't have any of that right now, but the leaves taste like pineapple, and it has a beautiful red flower that comes out in the fall. A lot of these things bloom in the fall here, and so hopefully I can get some pineapple sage. I'm just thinking about that in the future. But in front of it, over here, as we turn, we're going to like turn a little corner here. This is where I've got my lavender, and behind that I've got some rosemary. and the lavender is just doing beautifully, as is the rosemary. That's a little crepe myrtle that we had to take that tree down. Let me step in here and show you. This is just a crepe myrtle that's growing up. They grow like crazy here, and we've got crepe myrtles everywhere. They're beautiful because they have a lovely flower. It's a flowering tree in the spring. It is deciduous. It'll lose its leaves, you know, in the cooler months. But we had to take this down because it was really banging against the house and the gutter and everything. But it's just growing right back. I'm going to try to keep this one a little smaller, maybe like a little more ornamental, which would be cute. But I wanted to mention to you something. That rosemary right there on the corner, for a while I had that on my patio table, and it was all I hadn't had a chance to plant it yet, and it was all surrounded by a lot of other plants, and it developed a little powdery mildew. But as I shared with you in a previous video, I love gardening books by a fellow named Jerry Baker, and he's got a plethora of them. I think they call him like America's Gardener or something like that. But what is so fantastic about him? No need for pesticides, whether the real deal pesticides or even the organic ones. He has recipes for all home remedies. I'll be sure to put information about his books in the description below, because, and they're actual recipes. And you take like a little, for the powdery mildew, it's a little bit of instant tea, a little bit of baby shampoo, and I think it was a little bit of hydrogen peroxide. You put it in a spray bottle, you mix it with water. I've been spraying that. After a few days, the powdery mildew was definitely clearing up and under control. So if you like to do total, if you like home remedies in general, no matter what type they are, especially if you like home remedies for helping your plants, you can't go wrong with any book by Jerry Baker. Now, the way my house is set up is my kitchen juts out from the rest of the house. So there are 3 exterior walls for my kitchen. It's just this little piece of the house, and it juts right out. And so my kitchen, the bulk of my kitchen garden is in the back, and then I've got this little side garden here, and then I've got something in the front too, where actually when you come right out of our kitchen door is a patio, and we have a little pond there, I'll show you. And then I have a raised bed where I plant a few things. But on this side, what I do is, this is where I like to corral, so to speak, a lot of the things that I grow that are in the mint family. Now, bee balm, I believe, is in the mint family, but it's not as invasive as some of these other things. But what I've got here are all my mints, and it's primarily peppermint or chocolate mint, because those are the 2 that I like. I'm not a huge fan of spearmint, but I've got a wild onion growing up here, which is funny. But it's just kind of a mixture. You got the peppermint, the chocolate mint, and this will eventually all fill in, and it just does its own thing. And I don't have to worry about it, and I just let it go. And this, what I've done here is, I had some extra string bean seeds, so I decided to just put in a few string beans here, let them grow up the trellis. My sweet friend Rob over at Essayon's Family Garden. You've all heard me talk about Rob before. He and his family are just delightful. They live in Virginia. They have a big garden in their backyard. He's got a really big backyard. And he was so kind when he saw all the storms we went through in Texas and how many plants we left, how many plants we lost. He sent me a bunch of seeds, and so we love string beans, and he sent us a good amount of string beans, the seeds. And so I had some extras, so I said, well, I'll put them over here and just let them grow with the mint. But what I want to show you is something over here. This right down there in the corner is my lemon balm. And lemon balm, again, I believe is in the mint family. It can really spread and get not as invasive as the peppermint and the chocolate mint, but it can definitely work well with the mints. Now, right next to it, I have to tell you, this is so funny. I completely forgot all about that. And That is a elderberry bush. And I gotta figure out what, we're gonna see how it does since it's happy there and it's growing. I think I might leave it there. I'd like to get some more that I put in around the pond because it really likes to be, you know, where it's kind of a little damp. But that was funny that came back. And when I first saw that little bit of green coming up, I said, oh great, my lemon balm is coming back. But it was actually my elderberry bush. So that's funny. But there's a lot of little seedlings that are kind of starting to grow up. So we're gonna, from the lemon balm. So we'll definitely see how all of that shakes out and how everything does. Now what I've got growing down here outside of the raised bed are my thymes. I've got French thyme and I've got lemon thyme. I really like growing thyme. It's very easy to grow here in Central Texas. It does beautifully. And I just want to share with you that both of these are wonderful for culinary purposes. However, if you do grow herbs for making medicinal home remedies or for medicinal purposes, lemon thyme is your best bet because lemon thyme contains a very high amount of, and I believe the pronunciation is thymol or thymol, I'm not sure, Thymol, and that's the essential oil or the volatile oil that is very useful for when making medicinal home remedies. So if you like the idea of growing herbs for their medicinal purposes, as well as their culinary purposes, lemon thyme is wonderful in food. But if you're thinking your focus is on medicinal herbs, then definitely lemon thyme is a great herb to grow. Now in my raised bed here, I'm growing Sweet 100, the cherry tomatoes. I love those. They're just cute to cut in half and throw into salads or sort of any kind of dish. And they're doing beautifully. If you've seen part one, you know, like there was very little in here. But they are just doing great. We've got some blooms. I've got some tomatoes already appearing. They're still green, but they're just doing great. And whenever I post pictures about my garden this time of year in the community page here on YouTube, many of you say to me, my goodness, it's so early. Where do you live? And that's because I live in Central Texas. We've got to start planting. I got actually a late start because often we'll start planting in February. But with the storms and all the freezing unusual temperatures, that just didn't work out. And then we had a really big cleanup with trees that were down and so on and so forth. So I really didn't get planting until March. And that's still okay. There are even some things you can plant like up until the end of March, even maybe a little scotch into April, depending on how long it takes them to reach maturity. But I got these in, and so they're doing great. So hopefully in a couple more weeks, I'll be harvesting some tomatoes because by the end of June, it's just gotten so darn hot here. And come July, unless you have some way to screen things and you're really watering, that's really the time when kind of garden cleanup starts. And then you start prepping for your fall and winter garden that I'll probably start planting in August. So that's kind of how our cycle works here. But what I've also got growing, because they're just such wonderful companion plants for tomatoes, is basil. And I've just got some little basil plants. Some of the little bugs are having their way with it, but I've got one basil plant there. I had a few seeds I just put in there, so some of the basil plants are still real small. They like it to be very, basil likes to grow when it's very, very warm. And so we have been having some cool nights. So that'll eventually, you know, really take off probably over the next couple of weeks as our evenings start to heat up. Now behind my raised bed, which you may find this a little funny since it is a smaller you know, growing plant in terms of height, I have my Italian oregano. But if you saw the video, which I'll definitely link to in the iCards and in the description below, from last summer, where my son and I give you a garden tour, because last summer with all of the quarantine and everything that was going on, our son was home with us, and I really started thinking that I wanted to grow more vegetables instead of just herbs. I had a lot of herbs back here. But with him home, he was so kind. He built these raised beds for me, and we give you a little tour and we talk about the changes that we're going to make in the garden. But the reason I've got the oregano back here is, and I don't know, I was hoping my original oregano would have made it and come back, but I don't know. It doesn't look too promising. But that's where our oregano lived for years. And it always did well back here, so I figured when I was going to plant, and I bought little plants rather than seeds since I was getting a little later start, and I put in, they were small when I put them in, they're growing beautifully. But the oregano just seems to be so happy growing in that spot, so that's where it's going to live once again. Now, behind that, I've got some seeds coming up. You might notice it just looks like little grass right now. That's mammoth dill. Now, I also have some dill bouquet plants, which are slightly smaller and often ones that are really, I believe, the most common for using for culinary purposes. But I've got that mammoth growing in. We'll see how that does. And then maybe I'll put a few of those little dill bouquet plants right in this little area here. What I want to show you, let me just back up here. I'm trying to stay straight facing the microphone so that you all can hear me clearly. But these are just some beautiful green beans that I've got growing here. These are just stringless green beans. These were seeds that my friend Rob, as I shared from Essian's Family Garden, sent me, and they are doing beautifully. I am so excited about this. And what I want to mention, you may notice that I've just got like bamboo sticks here with my tomato plants, and then I've got some bamboo sticks here with my green beans, as well as this green type stake that actually was something that belonged to my father-in-law. God bless his soul. He's passed away now, but he was a wonderful gardener. And so I'm using some of these, but I only had 2 of them. And then I'm using the bamboo sticks as well, instead, specifically over here with the tomatoes, because in the past I've used tomato cages, and I've got really, really old, rickety tomato cages. But gosh, you know, I've had them maybe 30 plus years. However, I always find that the tomato plants just get so twisted in them and all. I probably don't maybe trim as I should. So this year I decided, you know, I'm just going to put in some bamboo stakes, just do the best that I can, and we'll see how everything goes. So here's Sweet Ovi, for those of you who maybe haven't met her yet. She's our girl that we just love so much. She's really getting up in years. She's about 14 now. But she's doing good, and she helps me in the garden, and she loves to go for her walks. She's such a good girl, and we love her so much. Yes, we do. We love you so much. So here in the front of this raised bed is where I have my chives growing, and they just grow like gangbusters. They love this area. So this is where they're going to live forever. They get a beautiful pink flower on top. They came back very strong after the storms, no problem at all. And I am very happy to have them here. They do spread. You'll see I've got a little friend growing out this way. I've got some smaller plants growing back there, which is fine. This will eventually just all fill in with chives. And they're tasty. They're wonderful for culinary purposes. The pink flowers are pretty and edible. And so you can never go wrong growing chives. So I'm very happy with the fact that everything came back. Now, what I've got growing over here are my Roma tomatoes. I love Roma tomatoes. They are my favorite type of, you know, they're the Italian plum, and they are my favorite type of tomato to grow. And I just wanted to let you know, if you're growing tomatoes, and maybe you're new to canning and you want to start with water bath canning before you move on to pressure canning. Maybe you don't have a pressure canner, you know, it does require a special type of canner, where water bath canning is a lot more flexible in how you can do that. And the good news is you can water bath can tomatoes. And I have a video where I show you how to do that. So if that's something that's interesting to you, I'll link to that in the iCards. I'll also put it in the description below. I've got a lot of canning videos, and so if you're new to canning, I can walk you through, or in the videos I walk you through step by step by step exactly what you need, exactly how to can, specifically water bath can. So I think you might find that helpful. But in any event, these are my Romas. I can't wait till they start growing. I'm very excited to grow Romas. They're just so tasty and so wonderful for the type of recipes that I like to make that often involve, Italian type ingredients. Now, in the front, again, I've just got some from taking over there, but I had some very old basil seeds. I don't think that it's going to work out. I'll give it a little longer, but there was just some mixed basil seeds. But as I said, they were very old, and I'm going to talk about that regarding this bed in a minute behind me. But, I just put all this stuff in. If it was old, I just said, well, let me give it a try. If it works, great. If not, I'm not going to worry about it. So that's what I had put in there, just some mixed basils. But let me show you behind me. Now, I had planted here seeds, but they were old. But I said, let me just see what might happen. But I think they just went kaput. They had been in my garage for quite a few years, and our garage can sometimes, oh my gosh, it can just get so hot in the summer. So I wasn't smart by not putting them, like maybe in the fridge or something. But they were the French green beans, the haricots verts, those real thin ones. But maybe I'll try those in the fall or next year. But what I do have is I had gotten some carrot plants again on clearance at my grocery store. So I put those in. We'll see how they go. And I'm going to put some seeds in here. I've got some, I believe they are the snow peas. And so I'm going to try those seeds in here. It's a little late because that can be, I believe, things in the green bean and pea family like that, like the snow peas. I think they're about 55 days to maturity, so I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I might just do a little experiment and see what happens with that. But right in the front, I just wanted to show you because some of you had asked me about the different things that my son and I had planted from that video where I shared with you about all the things you can grow right from scraps in your kitchen. So if you're new to gardening and you don't even want to buy seeds or plants, you don't want to make any kind of investment like that, and you just want to try your hand at gardening just to get started, there's a lot of things you can grow right from kitchen scraps. It's amazing. And I'll be sure to link to that video. But in any event, what you see growing here are just spring onions, you may know them as green onions, that I had bought at the grocery store and I used in a recipe, and I just saved the very bottom root, put it in, and here they are growing right up. So they're very easy to grow. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. You can even grow them right in a cup of water on your kitchen windowsill, and then maybe put them into a little soil so that make sure that they get some nutrition. But definitely check that out. Growing things from kitchen scraps is a lot of fun. And then I've got some green beans growing over there, just like I have on the trellis back there behind the oregano and the Texas tarragon. I just was so blessed to receive those green bean seeds, and since I had plenty, I figured, well, let me try in these two places, and they're doing beautifully. They're really doing beautifully. Now, this is an interesting mix. Now you might be wondering, I'm holding on to this bird as I'm in the garden here. I'll show you in a minute, but I get some little visitors at night, especially the squirrels. And I've been trying to put a little yard art around, hoping that maybe it'll discourage them. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But what I've got in this raised bed, now, yes, things look a little tight. I'm really doing the square foot gardening with these raised beds where I do plant kind of tight. And I might actually do this a little differently next year. I put my pepper plants in the raised bed, and they can be, my pepper plants will often come back as like perennials year after year. They often just stay green unless we, like what happened in February where we had really cold weather and then the plants did die. But normally they're just green and producing. It's fantastic. And so what I've got back here are some jalapenos, and I bought those jumbo jalapenos, which are really fun to grow, and then you can stuff them with cream cheese, wrap them in bacon, bake them in the oven. Just delicious if you like jalapenos. And then I also bought a different variety of pepper, and I believe, see, I just put on I have the little garden stake in there, I just put hot peppers. I believe I bought the little red, I think they're the red Thai chilies. I like those as well. I like to let them become red, and then I dry them, and they're very easy to dry. I just lay them out on my counter, and then I crush them up, and I put them in some olive oil, and I make a lovely little spicy olive oil, which is great for drizzling over chicken when you go to roast it, or especially like if it's spatchcocked or cut up into a lot of little pieces, and drizzle it with that spicy oil, the chili oil, delicious. Then in the middle, what I've got growing here, and you'll see, they're liking these bamboo stakes. They're growing and wrapping around them, which as you can see here, which is fun, giving them a little something. Oops, see, you can see there. But I've got, in the middle here, I'm growing pickling cucumbers, and I wanted to do those because I love pickling cucumbers. I will make like a sweet and sour pickle, and some are quick pickles that you can basically eat within a few hours. Others you can water bath can when you make pickles. You can water bath can pickles, and I've got videos about all of this, and so I'll definitely link to those things if you like the idea of making your own pickles. Whether you grow your own cucumbers, your own pickling cucumbers, or if you buy them at the grocery store. But it's nothing like homemade pickles. They are so good and so tasty, and we just inhale them. But in the front, what I've got here is the patty pan squash. And you can see these little babies, they've already started blooming, and the little baby patty pan squash is starting to grow. And I actually did this as like a surprise for my son when he comes home to visit us. And when he was a little boy, we always grew patty pan squash, and he loved it because if you're familiar with it, it almost looks like a little flying saucer. So he's going to get a big kick out of the fact that he sees that I'm growing it. And it's also just really tasty. You can just cube it up, saute it with some olive oil, garlic and onions. You can even throw in a little bit of your fresh flat leaf parsley if you grow that, or you get that at the grocery store. It's such a tasty, easy dish, and you're really maximizing the flavor of all the fresh foods that you're growing in your kitchen garden. You're not, masking them up. You're just, adding a few little things, and everything just tastes so fresh. I always describe it as just like a explosion or a burst of flavor in your mouth. So that's what we've got here: patty pan squash, pickling cucumbers, and some hot peppers. And I just want to mention, you might see that I'm walking on straw here, and I also have straw on top of the soil in all of my raised beds. And pretty much wherever I planted things, I would put some of this straw around. And I really have to give a shout out and a thank you to many of you know this gal Linda over at Linda's Pantry. Linda, I believe she lives somewhere in the Pacific Northwest now, but she used to live in Nevada. And her summers were hot like ours are here. And she did a video where she was showing that she bought some straw. It just comes in like a big package. I think in her case she had got it at Costco. And and she was talking about how her soil stayed so moist, and it really made a difference in how much she needed to water. So I said, oh my gosh, that is so perfect for Central Texas. So I've been using that as well, and it is just wonderful. And I put some in the walkways here as well, so that it's not too muddy. And I'm also hoping that it may help. I think I need a little more, but maybe it'll help keep down some of the weeds. But if you live in an area where it can get very hot and very dry, I highly recommend this. I'll put a link to it in the description. I think it's called Easy Straw. That's it. Easy Straw with tack. And they sell it with and without tack. And the tack kind of helps it all stay down. And apparently Linda talks about this in more detail in her video, but she talked to some folks at the company as well as some other gardeners who were using it, and it's supposed to be very natural, because I know people were worried, you know, might have put anything into your soil that you wouldn't want, and that wasn't the case at all. So she really reassured me when I saw that. And I've got to tell you, it really keeps my soil moist, and it really cuts down on how much I have to water. Now over here, I'm just growing some beets. Again, these were plants that I also got on clearance at my grocery store. And I've got some red beets here. And then I saved the little sticker here. This is a rainbow, because I didn't put up one of my garden identifiers. These are rainbow beets back here. So, you know, we'll see how they do. Again, you know, this gets a little bit of sun, but then it's going to be speckled for the better part of the day, and that's good because, as I shared with you earlier, you know, a lot of these plants just can't take our sun once it gets to the noon and then beyond. You know, the noon time and the afternoon sun, forget about it. Everybody at that point wants shade. But what I've got growing here are French breakfast radishes. These also were things that my son always enjoyed growing when he was a little boy gardening with me. Now, this one is doing great. This is why, you know, I mentioned about having the yard art. I'm getting a few folks nibbling these other three, but we'll see how they do. I think in the long run they'll be okay. But that's, if you've never had French breakfast radishes, I highly recommend growing them. They grow a little longer. They kind of have a little of a columnar type shape, and they're red and white, but the flavor is more mild than the traditional typical round radish. And the nice thing is that they make great sandwiches. And you know, we would prepare them like in the French way. We would slice them and put some butter on them, and they're really very tasty. And you can enjoy them, you know, with your breakfast. If you're having one of the breakfasts where maybe you've got some eggs and maybe a little toasted baguette, they're really quite tasty. So I highly recommend, if you've not tried growing, and they're easy to grow, French breakfast radishes. So definitely give those a try. Now I've also got some more bee balm growing here and here. And I've got some over on the other side under this live oak tree, and they've lived here before, and they've done very well. And it's nice because my kitchen window is straight down that way, and it's nice. I can open the curtains and see when they do grow up, they'll be about this high with those beautiful firework bursts of color from their flowers. And it's nice to, when I'm doing the dishes, to look out the window and see these in the distance. Now what I've got growing over here, we've moved now into the front of my kitchen garden, which I've got my kitchen doors right over there, and this is where our patio is. And what I've got growing here is some chamomile. And this will get a little bit of the morning sun, and then it will get shade. And that's how I can really prolong it being able to grow, because the chamomile here really can't take much more than just the morning sun, and then that's it. So, but as this grows, I'll show you. It gets a lovely flower, and it's kind of nice having it right outside my kitchen door. So if I want to snip some to make a chamomile tea and snip the flowers, it's this I thought would be a great area to try it out, and we'll see how it does. So this is the pretty little stone fountain that I was talking about before that we have off our patio here, and it's so nice and so refreshing. It's nice to hear the water and nice to see the water, especially as we heat up during the summer. Now, This is the raised bed that I was talking about. That's right outside my kitchen door, right here on our patio. And we've got a bird feeder, and we get a lot of sunflower seed debris that drops down, and then the sunflowers start growing. So it's kind of lovely. But right amongst it here, I have my Swiss chard, and this is my rainbow Swiss chard. It's doing great. This raised bed is pretty well sheltered, and they'll get a little bit of sun, but mostly partial shade. There may be a little dappled sun, and it's perfect for the Swiss chard. So this was a great place to put it. Now over here with my lovely statue of the Blessed Mother, I have some flowers growing, but I have to be honest with you, I forget. I didn't put any kind of plant stake, and I forget exactly what this is that's growing up, but I'm sure whatever it is, it's going to be lovely. And I also put in a hook over here. I've got a hummingbird feeder that I need to get out and hang up. So I'll definitely show you that once I get that all squared away, and we'll see what these flowers are going to be. Now I've got some more sunflowers popping up. I just let them grow. They're just pretty, and they do well here, and it's the birds spreading them. So we just enjoy it. But what I've got here, this is sorrel, and I love sorrel. Sorrel tastes like lemon, and you can make a sorrel soup, and you can just chop it up and put it into salads. If you like lemony flavored things, you'll love sorrel. Now, this is the red-veined sorrel. I actually like just the plain green sorrel the best, but I couldn't find it this year. And it was just like a little too late for me to start, because of the storms, to start with seeds for my sorrel. But this red-veined one is just doing great. I look forward to harvesting some of this and throwing it into salads. And it's doing wonderfully. And again, like with the Swiss chard, sorrel really can't take our hot sun or hot weather, and it really likes just having maybe a little bit of a touch of the morning sun, a little bit of a touch of the Texas morning sun, and then just being dappled or shaded for the better part of the day. And as you see, it's doing great. So this is, I just wanted to show you, this is the dill bouquet, and I bought 4 of these plants that I'm going to add to the back of my garden, where I showed you where I had some of the mammoth dill. I'm going to put in some of this dill bouquet also. I got these, it's a little late, I know, for planting here in Central Texas, but I got these, they were on clearance at the grocery store. My grocery store, I always tell you about HEB. So since they were on clearance, I said, I'm just going to go ahead and pick up a few. I'll put them in. They were so reasonable. If they do great, I think they'll be fine. And if not, it's not a huge loss. Then the other thing I wanted to show you was we went over to Lowe's, and they had all of these lovely marigolds. Now I had some marigold seeds, but again, they were old, and they didn't really seem to be, they don't seem to be germinating. Again, I said, I'm just going to use up all my old seeds and see what happens. And they don't seem to be germinating, but they had these marigolds on clearance. So I'm going to plant these, and then when they're ready to deadhead, I'll save the seeds, and then I'll put those away, and then I'll just replant the seeds next spring. It's something when I was a little girl growing up, my parents always had a lot of marigolds, and I remember deadheading the marigolds with my dad, and then he'd always save the seeds in little bags or little jars, whatever he had, and so that's always a nice memory for me. And these are great to plant in your garden because the roots are very helpful at fending off or discouraging certain types of pests. There's things in the roots that certain garden pests don't like. So I've got some, this one is already ready to kind of deadhead here, but some are yellow and some are orange, didn't matter to me. They were on clearance, and I said, perfect. I'll go ahead and I'll put the plants in, so I need to get these into the ground. Some are a little worse for wear, since they were on clearance, but I think once, I've watered them, and once I get them in the ground, I think they'll do fine. So these are the doors that lead to my kitchen, and this part of our house facing out that way is western exposure. So we have an awning. Also, it's a little worse from wear from some of the storms, but we have a great awning that comes down and gives our kitchen protection from that western exposure sun. But I've just got the drapes closed now because we came out through the garage. When you look in my garden, in my kitchen garden, and you see that like red, what looks like a barn, yes, that's the barn that's attached to our house. That's our garage. And so we came out that way because I wanted to bring a few things because I want to do some work in the garden, and I want to bring a few things from the garage. But so I still got this closed up. It's morning time. But these are the doors that lead to my kitchen. And so it's nice. We can come out here. Right now I'm kind of just using this as a work table. But we've got this nice table. We can enjoy our coffee or some lunch out here. We've got the delightful fountain to enjoy. And so it's a very nice place. Got a nice breeze. And we are a little covered. We have a deck above us. So there, we are a little covered, and then if the sun gets too strong, we can put the awning down. So it's lovely. I have to share something funny with you. I don't know, and I really have to thank you because you all are the ones who told me about this place. It's called Ollie's, and you said, Mary, because you saw my video where I talked about hunting for kitchen treasures at places like thrift stores, junk shops, and even from the garbage. So you might enjoy it. If you're a junker like me, you might enjoy that video. I'll be sure to link to it. But many of you left me comments, and they said, oh my gosh, Mary, you have got to discover this place called Ollie's. Well, we didn't have one where we live here in the hill country. So we went online and we found one. I got to ask my handsome cameraman, was it in Killeen, honey?
I think it was in
Killeen? So we drove up to Killeen. It's about maybe a good hour and a half or so from where we live. It's north of us. So we took a Sunday drive, and we had so much fun. We hadn't been to Killeen in a while. So we drove up to Killeen, and we found the Ollie's, and I found the prices there are fantastic. And it's just a mishmash. It reminds me, I don't know if we still have the store. There used to be a store in Austin years ago. I don't know if it's still here, called McFrugal's. And it was kind of like that, or some people might say maybe like Big Lots, but I feel that it's different than Big Lots. It's maybe not as organized. Big Lots to me almost can borderline on being like a regular store. Ollie's just seem to have that they must purchase whatever they can find, as closeouts or whatnot. But I found this planter and I fell in love with it. Texas. How can you beat that? And what I do is I like to collect a lot of little sticks and whatnot. If you all know, was it Tessie? Over at Homestead Tessie. She is so cute because she does this too. She always talks about after a storm and stuff, just collecting some, all the dead little bits and bobs of branches and whatnot that break off from trees. And I love to do this and just start collecting these, especially we had a lot that fell off after all those storms we had. And I just love to keep these in a big flower pot like this, and then I keep them by my fireplace, and then when it does get cool, in the few winter months that we have, which are really more like cold fall months, but I'm getting prepared now after what we went through in February. I'm not taking any chances. And I love just having this, almost like a little kindling. And if you have a nice big flower pot, it's a great place to store these things. So when I saw this, I said, oh my gosh, I gotta get this. But we got some books and a few other things, so if you have an Ollie's in your area, definitely go check it out. Well, I've just brought you back into the bigger part of my kitchen garden, and just to give you another look at everything that's growing. And as it matures and starts fruiting, I'll definitely bring you back so that you can see my harvest. But in the meantime, if you would like to catch up with my kitchen garden videos, be sure to click on this video over here, where I have a whole playlist where I show you this garden from start to where it is now. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen garden. Love and God bless.